Okay, once you have got all your pieces cut for your basic bodice, we can go ahead and start sewing it together. And so I've got the front piece here, this big front piece. Remember, this one was the one that was cut on fold, right? So I've opened it up, and this will be the whole front. Here's the neckline up at the top. These are the shoulders. These are going to be the armholes, side seam, and then we've got these two darts, really big darts that are going to be down at the bottom, and this will create the very fitted shape around the bust line, which is obviously a curvy area of the body. So we're going to have nice big darts, okay? And so we've got our dart legs notched, right? And we also, let me see where I marked it. I marked it on this side. We also marked our dart point here. I've got mine in blue, okay? So what you can do if you want is you can draw this out and draw your entire dart with maybe some chalk or something, again, that can wipe away, because you don't want to see this later on the outside of your garment. And if you do, you'll just take a ruler, line it up with, here's my cut notch, and here's my dart point, and I'll just make the lightest, faintest blue line, and I'll do it on the other side. There we go. So now I've got my dart totally marked out, and what we're going to do is pinch away. Pinch these two ends together here, and then pinch it all the way to this point. See if I can do this with one hand. And there we go. So this is basically how much will come out of it, and that'll be sewn, so we'll create this shape, okay? And then what I usually like to do, just to mark this point so I can see it on both sides, is I'll take a pin and stick it right through that very point. And then what I'll go ahead and do is pin in this direction. Okay. So I am matching up my two notches. And I'll put a pin. Oh, actually, here, let me do this the other direction so you can see what we just drew on. I guess I can leave that. But I'll pin it this way. There we go. Since I took my time to draw the line, this way you can actually see it. Okay, so I'll pin this way. And again, out of some habit, I usually just like to have my dart excess on this side when I sew. But there we go. And this will be the line I'll sew on. And then I come down here to where I've got this pin going right through that dart point. I'll fold, making sure that I'm exactly on that point, precisely on there, and then I'll use a pin to pin this fabric together and get rid of this guy, okay? And because this is a long dart and a really big one, this might be a time when you put like another pin in the middle, just to make sure it doesn't move on you, okay? But you've got this shape. We're now going to sew down here until we go right off the edge, creating a nice smooth dart point, okay? So we'll come back up here to sew, turn on my machine, and I will start right at the edge of that dart. Again, I'm holding on to my threads for the first 1 or 2 stitches so they don't get lost. I'll get rid of this pin, and now I can just follow this line that I've drawn. Just make sure I keep the fabric straight as I go. And I'll get rid of this pin along the way. And I'm going to go right off the edge here. And let's see if I did okay, how accurate I was. Pretty good. I've got my nice pretty line. I can just barely see the blue. It looks like, I'll use a pin so you can see. I think there was my dot, so I went over about 1 stitch, but the more important thing is that I really evenly went right off the edge. Even if my dot was, you know, here, I don't want to just come straight over. I really want this really nice, even, gradual line, okay? So that's really super key. And then I do see here from my very light chalk drawing that it looks like my line was a little bit higher. So maybe it was just when I folded it, it kind of got a little bit twerked, but hopefully it should be okay and not create a big shape issue when we put it on a mannequin or try it on someone. That's when we would be able to see how our fit really turned out. In these cases, you know, we're just sewing, hoping for the best accuracy possible, and then again trying it on someone would really let us know if any major changes had to be made. So I'm going to go ahead and try and to get this twist open. So using a pin to just open these two, there we go, so that I can tie my dart point off into a double or triple knot so that doesn't come unraveled. And I'll go ahead and trim that about 1/4 of an inch from that knot, and then I can actually do the same down here. Probably when I sew this into something, you know, I'll catch this bodice in to something else, but I'll just go ahead and tie this off now just so it doesn't unravel while I'm working with it. Okay, so we've got this dart sewed. Open it up to the front to see. And so what it's done, it's really nipped in a large piece of the fabric, and you can start to see that again, you very much have a 3-dimensional object now. Imagine that your neck goes here, your arm comes out of here, and this is where the fullness of the bust is going to happen, and then it's going to nip back in at your tiny waist, okay? So remember that the dart excess, all of this, is going to get pushed towards center front, which is here, right? Remember when we cut, here is the dead center, the fold line. It's up here at the neck that we marked. So this is our center front, right in the middle of our fold. So this is the way we're going to press this dart. So I'll take this over to the iron and see if I can get that pressed. And so again, I've got a 3-dimensional piece now. I can't really lay the whole thing flat and press it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work with sort of the bottom piece, you know, sort of piece by piece. And I am just taking it, the iron, and pushing this dart excess over there, okay? And then see, I'm taking the tip of my iron right up into that point. And because I'm now creating a 3-dimensional shape, I'm not going to try to really iron much into the top at this point. Okay, but we can kind of see what happened here. I've got this really nice even press that just sort of seamlessly blends in, okay? And you can see how it starts to make it round, right? A really nice soft round shape. What I want to make sure is that I didn't fold any fabric unnecessarily into that dart when I was pressing it, but it looks pretty good, so I can go ahead with the next dart. And so this dart, I'm going to show you the way I do it without marking it. Again, totally your decision. If it's easier for you to mark it, it makes more sense, do it, but I usually don't. So again, we've got one of our darts back here, right? So this now becomes the good side of our fabric if it wasn't already clear. It'll be easier later when you're using real fabric, but right now since we're using muslin, it can be hard to tell. So I'm going to find my dart point on my other dart. In this case it is here. And what I want to make sure I do now is pinch this dart excess so that it's also in the back with this one, okay? You wouldn't want one dart to be in the front and one dart to be in the back. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pinch that and start pinning it. And again, so I'm pinning here where the two come together, and what I do is I just come down and find where I've pinned right into that blue dot. I'm going to fold that right in the center, exactly where I've pinned it, and then I'm just going to let the fabric flatten out based on where this is folded and tell me where it wants to be, okay? So I'm just letting that fold happen. No need to draw my dart legs. I'm going to use this pin to mark so I can pull this one out. This is the end of my dart point, and this is somewhere around the middle, okay? And now when I sew, I am just going to sew a straight line from here to here, but I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to take it straight down, okay? So let me see if I can do this from a short distance with the camera in between me and the sewing machine, which is always a little bit more difficult. So presser foot down, I'm taking that needle down right about where my notch is opening. I'm going to hold on to these threads for the first 1 or 2 stitches, get it going, pull my pin out, and even at this point I can start to line up the fabric. Again, my end goal is here, so I can just tell myself I'm sewing straight down till I get to there. If this is in my way now, it's probably not moving. I can take that right out. So let's see if I can do this. And I'm just aiming for a super gradual progression towards that pin. Okay, needle up, presser foot up, and let's see my success. So this one ended up being just shy of the pin by about 1 stitch length. So that would definitely make this a little bit smaller of a dart than on the other side where I went about 1 stitch length over. We can always see how that ends up looking. I do say aim for absolute precision and accuracy, but I'm going to take that tiny space and run with it right now. Okay, so I've triple knotted here at my dart point. I'm going to go ahead and tie this guy off too down at the dart legs with just a double knot. Trim that to get this thread out of the way, and now I've got my second dart. Okay, so let's press this one. Bring this over here, and again I'm going to press this towards center front by mostly just pushing with the iron, pushing that excess where it wants to go anyway. And I'm taking the tip of my iron and just putting it right into the dart point, and I'm actually picking up the fabric so that I can move it around now that it is a 3-dimensional object, and get right into that dart point. So even as my bodice is now laying here, I can no longer lay it flat. It has this bump built in. It has the bodice shape. The bust is built in. This is the tiny waist. This is the curve for her bust line. So you start to see it right away. You no longer have a 2D shape. You now have a 3D shape. She has instant boobs built in. So you can start to see what it's becoming, okay? So that is the front darts done. And now we can do the back darts. Okay, and so we've got 2 mirrored pieces for the back, right? So what's going to happen is these 2 straight lines will go together, and that is our center back. And again, here you see this curve up at the top is going to be the neck. It's the half neck because this one's cut in half. This is the shoulder. This is the armhole, side seam, and down at the bottom we've got 1 dart down here. It'll be a long skinny dart, and we've got the tiniest little dart ever up here that's going to shape ever so slightly around the shoulder. Okay, so we'll start with 1 and then we'll do a mirror image on the other side. So again, I like to put a pin through my dart point, and then I will fold these 2 together till the notches touch, and I'll pin here. And all of these darts are very different shapes. This dart ends up being very long and skinny. So here I can fold until this point is exactly in half, and then just see if I can let this fabric naturally fold where it wants to. I'll place this with a pin to mark my end point, and I'll put a pin in the center here. Okay, so again, now my goal is going to be to sew from this opening all the way down off the edge to here. So a really long skinny dart. We do have a little bit of shape on our back, but not a lot, not nearly as much as we do in the front of our body on the bust, which is why this dart is so differently shaped. So let's see if we can do this one. Again, press our foot down, needle down. I'm going to walk those first few stitches, take my pin out. I'll even get rid of this second one, and my goal is to sew straight until I go right off the edge, way down here. Let's see how I can do it. Okay, that was a long one. So, needle up, presser foot up. There we go. And so we've got a really long skinny dart. It looks like when I'm looking at this through the camera lens, again, I could have gone a little bit, like 1 more stitch to hit my blue, my little blue dart point, but it's really, really close. I'm going to go with it. And of course, if you end up looking at your stitch and it's not super straight, or it's a little funky, or it didn't get where you want to go, you can pull it out and redo it, or sometimes you can even just go over top of it, you know. So say that I'd sewn a pretty good stitch, you know, from here to here, and then something went awry here, you could always start from that point and just keep going there. But I'm going to go with it and tie this off on the end too. Clip this. It's just nice to get all those threads out of your way right away. So here we go. This is from the front. This is a really skinny little dart. It just nips in a little bit at the waist, and unlike the front, where we obviously, this dart made this like round shape, you don't want to see that here. You want it to be a lot more gradual, because we don't have any big round thing that's kind of popping out on our back. This should really be a very gradual nip in to give that little bit of roundness that we've got at the back, okay? So before I press this, I'll go ahead and do this little baby dart too, and then I'll press them both at the same time. So I've got this tiny dart up here. I want to make sure it's obviously going in the same direction as this. This is now the back side, the wrong side of my fabric. So let's make sure I pinch this on this side as well. I'm going to mark this dart point, that blue dot, before I lose it. This is the tiniest dart. A lot of times in patterns you'll see that they've gotten rid of this dart. It isn't always there, or they've worked it into another seam. It's not a hard one to get rid of because it is so tiny. But honestly, it's really good practice when we're sewing darts. Okay, so I've got this coming together here. Let me make sure it keeps moving on me. I want that to come together really nice and flat. Oops. And then, there we go. Nice, flat, okay? And that's right in our center. Put another pin there, get rid of this guy. There we go. So I'm going to sew from this opening right to the edge. Ooh, it's such a tiny one. Okay, so presser fit down, needle down. Let me make sure I've got my threads, get that pin out of the way. And I'm just going to sew straight until I go right off the edge. Very gradual. Okay, press a foot up, clip that, and you can see, let's say, same, I've got about, it's like about a stitch away from where I wanted, but this is a very gradual dart. See how it's just like very subtle. So we'll go ahead and tie this guy off as well. Triple knot, so double or triple, just make sure it doesn't come unraveled, and clip about 1/4 of an inch. And then this little dart up here becomes the notch that matches to the front for our shoulder seams. So we'll tie that off too, clip that, and then we'll show you how tiny this little dart is. It's really just hardly a pinch, but it is enough, and it does give a really nice fitted, tailored shape. Okay, and notice these two are practically touching. There's really only a short amount of space from this dart to the next. So a popular way to handle this fit is actually to just draw a line for both of them and make these two separate pieces, and you could sew that together. That's called a princess seam, and we'll do that later when we do pattern making. So I'm going to go ahead and press these. And again, where do they get pressed? They all get pressed towards the center. So either the center front or the center back. So let's press this bottom one first. My center back is that way, so I am just going to let it do what it wants. I am just going to take it and push with the iron, push it in that direction. And then again, my goal is when it gets to the top point of the dart to have a really seamless transition. I don't want as harsh of a bump as I had in the front. And I'll do the same thing, I'm just flipping it around. And even this little shoulder seam gets pressed towards the front. Or I should say, sorry, the center. So it's actually the back in this case, the center back. So I'm just pressing, going for a really seamless transition. Okay, and so I can just check. Again, now that's nice and pressed, really nice and neat. And we have the same here. And this is ultimately almost a flat piece, but I do have this slight shaping that's happening there, okay? And I'll do the same thing for my other back, because I have two of these, but I'll just make sure that I mirror it, okay? Meaning, like, see, these two sides are going to match up together so that I have one neckline that continues here, these two are the armholes. Okay, so I want to make sure that my dart gets pinched in this direction this time, okay? So that I have two that are mirrors of each other. And again, just to demonstrate that you can mark this out ahead of time. Again, go ahead, maybe the first one that you try, mark it out. I will draw the dart out. So again, I'll start down here where I've got that little notch. And I'll do these really light lines that hopefully I won't end up seeing on my final garment. Or again, since it's in chalk, I can wipe it away. But now you can see this really long line, okay? And I'll go ahead and mark it for this top shoulder baby dart as well. Okay, so again, really tiny, tiny, tiny little triangle, okay? And again, just double checking. I want to make sure that they go in this direction. So I'll pin that there. And I'm just looking for this point to be exactly on the fold. And what I can always do, since I've marked it on both sides, is I can take a pin and push it through on one line and see if it comes out on the line on the other side. And it pretty much does. If it's a little off, you can just jiggle it over until it gets in the place that you need it to be. And I just out of habit like to put a pin where my end point is. Again, it just helps me keep my eye on the prize. Let me check here. So here I'm going through the blue line, and look, I'm coming out on this side and it's hitting it flawlessly. So hopefully this will be really accurate when we go to sew it. Just setting up my threads, and I'll put this right on my line, drop the presser foot, drop the needle, sew a few stitches. And now, because I drew this out, I can just follow my line. And I'm just trying to go right off the edge. Okay. Looks like I got there. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this end, my dart point. And then I will tie and trim up the bottom, so that that doesn't unravel as I am working with it. And I can get rid of these excess threads that are going to start to build up and get in my way. Oh, clipped this a little long. There we go. And then I can go ahead and do this last dart here. So, tiny, tiny baby dart. I'm going to mark, fold these two sides together. And then again, I've got this dart point here. This one is so small, I feel like it's really easy to have it move on you. So maybe fold them both kind of for a minute before you settle on a side. Okay, and then again, we can check for accuracy. Since we've drawn it on there, I can take my pin in right on the blue line on this side, and look, it's coming out right on the soft blue line on this side. So I think we're in a good place. So we'll sew this one just the same way.